Hello, sixth graders. So we're going to start today's lesson by just reviewing a little bit from yesterday. So really quick, it says when converting a percent to a fraction, okay, all you do is just cross out the percent sign and put the number over what? Well, you want to put it over 100 because we talked about this yesterday. Percent. That word cent literally means 100. So percents deal strictly with the number 100. They basically mean out of 100. So let's look at this. It's 2%. How would you write 2% as a fraction? 2 over 100. What about 74%? It would be 74 out of 100. And lastly, 31% would be 31 out of 100. So that's pretty straightforward. If you have a percent, you can easily right away turn it into a fraction. We also talked about how to convert a fraction to a percent. All you do is get the denominator to a 100 as well, okay? Because again, percents, 100. And you do that by finding equivalent fractions, and then the numerator is your percent once it is over 100. So 4/5, what can we multiply 5 by to get to 100? We can multiply 5 by 20. Whatever we do to the bottom, we do to the top. We end up getting 80/100ths, which is what as a percent? That's 80%. Okay, 1/10. How do we get 10 to 100? Multiply by 10. Do the same thing to the top. So what is this as a percent? 10/100ths. It would be 10%. And the last one, do by yourself. See what you get. What would you get that as a percent? Well, 25 times 4 is 100. Whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So your answer would be 48%. So that's all fine and dandy. We can get percents to fractions. We can get fractions to percents. But what about if we throw a decimal into the mix? Okay, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be converting decimals to percents and percents to decimals. So it seems silly, but there's a little rule that I always follow when converting decimals to percents and percents to decimals. And it's called the Dr. Pepper rule. Okay, so when you think of Dr. Pepper, I want you to think of the letters D and P. Okay, so D for doctor, P for pepper, but in this case, D stands for decimals and P stands for percents. So if you are converting a decimal to a percent, you're going to move the decimal 2 times to the what? So let's look. We start over here because that's where decimals is, okay? We start over here, decimals is here. Going from decimals to percents, we move it 2 times in what direction? Which way did we just point that arrow? We move it 2 times to the right. So going from a decimal, starting in this direction, to a percent over here, okay? You're going to move it twice to the right. So let's look at a few examples. 32/100ths, move it once, twice to the right. Okay, your answer is 32%. Okay, because 32, the decimal will just be right at the very end, which is just a whole number. The next one, same thing. Move it twice to the right. Okay, it will be 78%. Now, I know you're doing this virtually, so what I would suggest so that you can write this out, I would do this on a scrap piece of paper if you want, so you can actually physically see yourself moving that decimal 2 times to the right, because it's really hard to kind of do that on the virtual notes. Okay, so the next one would be 87/100ths, again, twice to the right to get it to a percent, which would be 87%. Okay, and think about it. I just said 87/100ths. So 87/100ths written as a fraction is 87/100ths. Okay, and isn't that how we write that fraction as that percent? Yes. So you can see that these decimals, these fractions, and these percents are all equivalent. We call this number 1/100th. Okay, we write that as 1/100th. We can also shift it over twice to get 1%, which is equivalent to that as well, 1/100. Okay, the next one, move it twice to the right, 25%. 25 hundredths is 25%. And the last one, 99 hundredths, again, we can write that as a fraction, 99 hundredths, which is the same thing as saying 99%. Okay, so you can think about it as a fraction. You can shift that decimal over twice to the right, but you can also kind of just refer to DP, starting from the decimals, going to the percents, to the right 2 times. So if we move to the right to go from a decimal to a percent, well, you guessed it, we move to the left to go from a percent to a decimal. And think about it. For the DP, the Dr. Pepper rule, start at percent, move once, twice to the left. So you move the decimal 2 times to the left. So the decimal is right before that percent sign. You move it once, twice. Okay, it's 16 hundredths. Again, same thing with 6%. You move it once, twice. Okay, the decimal's there. There's a 0 right before that 6, so it's 6 hundredths like that. And just like we did before, 49%, can't we write that like as a fraction, 49 hundredths? And we know what 49 hundredths looks like as a decimal, 49 hundredths. So you can shift the decimal. You can think about it as a fraction if you would like to make sure you can get that decimal equivalent. Whatever method works best for you. So 20% shifted to the left twice. It would be 20 hundredths. 34% shift it to the right twice. 34 hundredths. 2%, remember, cross out that percent sign. You can write it as a fraction if you would like. 2 hundredths, which we could write as 2 hundredths. Now, if you don't want to turn it to a fraction first, what you can also do is just shift it once, twice, decimal goes there, 0 goes there. They're identical, okay? So you can use the Dr. Pepper rule to help you decide to move to the left or to the right depending on where you're going. But again, like I mentioned, you can also write the decimals and the percents as the fractions. And once they're written as a fraction, it's really easy to go either to a percent or to a decimal from a fraction. Okay, so if worst comes to worst, always convert it to a fraction and then you can decide what to do from there. Okay, so what you are going to do, okay? What I want you guys to do is I want you to complete this table. All right, complete this table on your own and see what you get. So you have a decimal, okay? Change it to a percent, change it to a fraction. What I would always say, always try to complete the fraction first, and then it's really easy to change it to a percent and a decimal from that fraction. So complete this chart by yourself and see what you get. So this decimal is 4 hundredths. And we can say it because it's tenths, hundredths. So we can write it as 4 hundredths, okay? And if you have it as a fraction, remember the numerator, if it's over 100, that's the percent, 4%. Now, you could have solved it a different way. You could have said, oh, well, I'm going from a decimal to a percent, so I shift it twice to the right. You could have gone 1 twice, and that's how you could have gotten your percent. And then from your percent, you could have gotten 4 over 100. So you could have done this 2 ways. Both of them would have been correct. 2/5, again, we can write 2/5 like this. We need to get that fraction, that percent, over out of 100. So 5 times 20 gives me 100. Whatever you do at the bottom, you do to the top. You get 40 hundredths, which 40 hundredths is the same thing as 40%. Okay, and if you want, you can change that percent to a decimal by shifting this over once, twice to get this answer. Or instead of shifting, you could have just said, oh, 40 hundredths, 40 in the hundredth spot. Okay, so again, there's several ways you can go about completing these problems. 17%, you can write that as a fraction as 17 hundredths. You can also shift the decimal over once, twice to get 17 hundredths as your decimal. 6/25, we can write 6/25 like this, okay? 25 times what gives you 100 times 4, you get 100. Whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. You get 24 hundredths, which is the same thing as 24 hundredths, which is the same thing as 24% because it's over 100, okay? 3%, again, going back to our first lesson, you can cross out that percent sign and put it over 100 for the fraction. 3 hundredths to write as a decimal, 3 hundredths in the hundredth spot, or you can go like this, Dr. Pepper method, once, twice, to get 3 hundredths like that. Our last two, 56 hundredths, we can literally say it out loud. 56 hundredths is 56 hundredths, which since it's over 100, we could take the numerator and make it 56%. And the very last one, 1/4. Okay, what you can do to get that 4 to a 100 is multiply by 25. Whatever you do to the bottom, you can do to the top. You get 25 hundredths. So if that denominator is a 100, our numerator is our percent. And now, again, you can do one of two ways. You can say this as a fraction, 25 hundredths, to get your decimal of 25 hundredths. Or Dr. Pepper method, once, twice to the left, 25 hundredths. Okay, so basically today's lesson was converting percents, decimals, and fractions and finding a lot of equivalents. What you guys are going to do is you are going to complete a Google slide almost identical to this slide that you see right in front of you, okay? And you are going to complete this and find the decimal, fraction, and percent equivalents when you only have one of them. You're going to be given a decimal, you have to find the percent or fraction. If you're given a percent, you have to find the decimal or fraction, and so on. What I would suggest is to do this on scrap paper and then plug into the activity, just so that if you need to shift anything or if you need to move decimals or multiply top and bottom by anything, you can do that on your scrap paper so you don't have to try to do it in your head virtually. All right. If you do have any questions, please let me know. Again, use these notes during the review and during the homework so that you can refresh a little bit. And if you have any questions, you can look at those notes. All right. Have a wonderful day, 6th grade. Bye.